When did perimenopause start for you? When did you start getting this? And she's like, don't you remember that time in life where I was just cranking the air conditioning all the time? Our heating bill was through the roof. And I said, oh, yeah, that's right. Because she was always notoriously frugal,
Yeah.
especially when it came to the air conditioning. So I remember that time. And yeah, it's just not something that we talk about so much in society. We talk a lot
No.
about puberty and coming of
Hmm.
age for our little ones of like becoming a woman or becoming a man, but there's no talk about this amazing journey that we go on at the end of our reproductive cycles as well.
Welcome to Aging in Style with Lori Williams, the podcast all about finding the silver lining no matter what life throws your way. I'm Lori Williams, an award-winning senior living expert, author, educator, and caregiver to my husband, Mark. Join me as I share insights, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate the world of senior housing, discover ways to pay for care, advocate for your loved ones, and most importantly, learn how to thrive, not just survive, as you age. Hi, welcome to Aging in Style. On this podcast, we cover so many different topics, but the one topic that we have not covered is menopause and perimenopause. And I don't know why we haven't done that. I think maybe because I haven't found the right expert to really talk to, but we are taking care of that today because we have the perfect person. So we have the creator of Hot or Just Me, Carin Luna-Ostaseski, and I hope I said your name correctly. That's a tough one for me. But Carin is a serial entrepreneur. She started a whiskey business, sold that. We'll talk more about that in the podcast. And then started to go through, as all of us do, all of us women at some point in life will go through perimenopause and menopause, and started asking herself that question we all have is it hot or just me? And so that inspired her to start an online shop for managing the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. And so she has lots of products, expert advice, just like a complete community of support. So I'm really excited to have her on the podcast and have her talk more about how her products can help people. So welcome, Carin.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lori. It's a pleasure.
Well, I have wanted to talk about menopause because no one ever really talks about it. And I love that you reached out and I learned what you're doing, and I want to share that with the audience. So can you kind of like tell us why this just piqued your interest? How
Yeah,
did this come about?
absolutely. So it all kind of started for me in my early 40s. I'm 47 now. And it started out with hot flashes. So it was this simple question that I was asking myself and pretty much everyone around me is it hot or is it just me? And that led me to realize, first off, that it was mostly just me. And also that I was well into perimenopause. I had other symptoms that followed, like brain fog, anxiety, hair loss. I was going to say brain fog again, which is really funny. And so I spoke to my doctors a lot about, HRT as a possible solution, but it wasn't quite my time yet. And so through the years, I found some really incredible products and services that have made a really big difference in my life. And so my hope was that it could help other women who were in the same search as well. And so that's how Hot or Just Me came to be.
I love it. So we had talked before prior to the podcast, just kind of about menopause and everything. And it's like, there were things I didn't know. And I'm 60 now. I started menopause. I'm like really into it. I'd say probably like late 40s and maybe 48 or so. And I was not expecting brain fog. I was not expecting the anxiety or like extreme anger. And my family
Oh,
have
yeah. The meno rage. It's real. Yeah.
yeah, they didn't tell me at the time. I think they were a little scared of me, but they told me later that I was kind of mean. But I had to kind of like white knuckle through it because my mother had used, I guess, estrogen patches is what back in, I guess it was like the late 80s. And she got breast cancer and no one in our family had ever had breast cancer. So my doctor said, you can't take anything.
Okay.
I don't know if that's still true now, but I just somehow made it through and my family survived too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely, a lot of studies that have come out about breast cancer ties with hormone therapy, and some have been debunked for sure. But I think it's a very individual discussion that needs to happen with your doctor because there are some other factors that obviously can contribute to it. So just really learning what you can about your own medical history, your family history, and having those conversations specifically with your doctor. But yeah, there's just so much going on at this time. And my mom, I think it hit her in her early 40s as well, because I remember when this was happening, I kind of just called and said, "Hey, when did perimenopause start for you? When did you start getting this?" And she's like, "Don't you remember that time in life where I was just cranking the air conditioning all the time? Our heating bill was through the roof." And I said, "Oh yeah, that's right." Because she was always notoriously frugal,
Yeah.
especially when it came to the air conditioning. So I remember that time. And yeah, it's just not something that we talk about so much in society. We talk a lot
No.
about puberty and coming of age for our little ones, of like becoming a woman or becoming a man, but there's no talk about this amazing journey that we go on at the end of our reproductive cycles as well.
Yeah, no, and it definitely should be talked about. And the hot flashes are for real. It's
Oh yeah.
like you have to just experience it. And if you're a woman, you will. But it's like it comes from the inside out. Like you feel like you're on fire. And I
Mhm.
remember I wear glasses and my glasses would actually fog up at times.
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible. But my husband was always the one who was hot. I always was the one freezing in the relationship.
Wearing sweaters.
Oh,
Yeah.
this happened. And there's my husband, like with the coat on. He's like, "It's really a little too cold in here." And I'm like, "Not for me."
Yeah, I have moments like that where I like, first like my foot will go seeking out like under
Yeah.
the sheets to try to find the
hmm
cold air. And then finally I just toss the blankets aside. And I look over, my husband has like 5 blankets on top of him. He's just shivering. But yeah, it's for real. And it's definitely for me, it was hitting at night as well.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you do the thing you mentioned, the take one foot out. I remember doing that. It's still
Yeah.
every now and then I feel too hot, but it's not, I have to say, I think I'm, knock on wood, I think I'm past it completely because it's very rare that I ever have a hot flash and not
Ah.
to the extent that I was having them.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely learned some control methods for sure. Some have, I think there was a time when it felt like every couple hours I was just, my head, my neck, my chest would just get so warm. I'd be
hmm
sweating, it'd be ripping
Yeah.
off like layers of clothing. And then, yeah, I've made like some cutbacks in terms of caffeine. That's been a
hmm
big one. Especially like first I cut out the afternoon cup of coffee, and that definitely helped with my sleep and the
hmm
night sweats for sure. And then I eventually just cut out the morning one too. And with that went, all these like jitteries, anxiety that I was feeling have
hmm
just kind of gone away too. So definitely some lifestyle changes.
That's good to know.
Alcohol's another one. That was a hard one
Yeah.
to do, being as someone who was
hmm
in the whiskey industry for 10 years, always telling everyone to drink whiskey. And now I'm telling people, maybe don't drink late at night, or maybe drink during the day only, and maybe more moderation, because that definitely helps contribute to those wake ups at 2 in the morning when your liver is processing the alcohol.
Good
And
point.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, but then, products. So, like on Hotter Just Me, we have a collection of cooling blankets, cooling
Mm.
sheets, cooling pillowcases.
hmm
We have sleepwear that's designed to, wick the moisture and kind of help with the sweats. But yeah, and then, I wear like cooling jewelry, like this bracelet I'm wearing today. It's
Oh,
a
that's cool.
freezable
No pun
jewelry.
intended. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
So what are
Yeah.
the most popular items in your shop?
It's funny that you asked that. I would have thought it would have been all the hot flash products for sure, but what I'm seeing an uptick in is the low libido products.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, we have vaginal moisturizers and
hmm
lubricants and vibrators, and those are selling really well.
Yeah.
And so I think it speaks a lot to, women we're vibrant. We
hmm
have sex drives, and when we feel like this decrease in like this mood, or just not being in the mood, like what can we do to help surround ourselves, to kind of get out of that, because it's
hmm
good for our mental state, it's good for our energy, and it's good for our well-being, to keep that part of us alive.
You bring up a good point. Like as you move through menopause, other things happen to your body that nobody talks about.
Oh yeah.
And one is that, people can have issues with sex. It becomes painful. And so you're saying
hmm
you have products that can address those issues too. It's because of the estrogen, right? Because of the drop in
Yeah,
estrogen.
Yeah, so as your estrogen declines, it kind of wreaks havoc on your brain, your heart, your skin, your breasts,
Mhm.
and so much of your body. I think about as kids are entering puberty, all the changes that they go through, their moods, their skin, their stability, like just all of it. And so we have a version of that, both men and women. So women will go through menopause, it's the end of their reproductive cycle. Men go through a version where they have a drop in testosterone. And I jokingly, and now I kind of have taken that back, but I was calling it my husband's midlife crisis. And I realized, like, oh, he has andropause, which is a decline in testosterone.
Mhm.
He's taking hormone replacement therapy for that now. But, the things that we have in common, men and women during this decline, is that we get mood swings, we get depression, headaches, night sweats, insomnia, weight gain, and bone loss. And then as symptoms of andropause specifically, there might be some mild to moderate sexual dysfunction. There's muscle loss, there's low energy, lack of focus, decreased motivation. So it's no surprise that this is a time in life that's very common for
Yeah.
divorce.
That
Because
that's
we're
very
we're
interesting.
both
Yeah.
dealing with things
Hmm.
at the same time. Yeah.
You never hear anyone talk about that's what it's called.
Andropause.
I
Yeah.
never even heard that term, and that's ridiculous that we don't know that. And so it's like the same kind of like age time, like late 40s, early 50s, kind of like that. Same.
Yeah.
That is okay. Study
Yeah.
needs to be done on that in divorce because there could be
Definitely,
something
right?
there.
Yeah, and that we're not talking about it as a couple or to each other. I
Hmm.
say like, there's a lot of girlfriend medicine, which is, we
Yeah.
talk to our friends a lot about it, but I
Hmm.
think that men don't have that same community as much to talk about those things,
Yeah.
and so just to even realize
Hmm.
like, oh, this is some changes are happening in my body and in my mind at this age, and what is
Hmm.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, good point. I don't think men just aren't wired to really talk that way. Like we're, like you said, like with women, we just say like everything. This is what's happening. Is this happening to you?
Yeah,
Is this
exactly.
normal?
Is this normal? Totally.
So interesting. I also want to kind of back up to where I know your first career is whiskey, right? So
Yeah.
you create, tell me about that. I'm just interested to
Oh.
know about it.
So yeah, this is the hotter just me is actually my third act in life. I'm calling it. So my first career, I was a graphic designer and a creative director for almost 20 years, and I
Wow.
spent most of my days just staring at a computer screen. And it was around the time I was going through my divorce that I was just kind of like what else can I burn down at this point in my life? And it's like a lot of identity issues were happening of just who am I without this person, and I was realizing I was just so unhappy with my career. I was just staring at a screen all day long, designing things so that other people could stare at their screens longer. And
Hmm.
I realized that's not what I wanted my legacy to be. And so around that time, I was also drinking a little more than usual. And I was enjoying these moments where I'd sit down with someone and have a glass of scotch and just take your time and really like go
Hmm.
deep into conversation. And so I realized that I wanted to create something around the whiskey space. And I'm a Hispanic woman, so I'm not like your typical like person that you would think of as like a scotch maker, right? So
Hmm.
I ended up researching quite a bit of distilleries and whiskey blenders and eventually found a partner to create the blend. And then I was off to the races, and it made me the first woman in history to ever create a brand of scotch. And
Amazing.
I think won numerous awards and grew to commercial success, and eventually was acquired by one of the largest spirit companies in the world. So I got to work with them for many years in terms of
Hmm.
building out the product. But there was a time when it was like, okay, well, I've got a lot of free time now. And I've got like, 6 or 7 hours a day while my kids are in school. And I
Hmm.
realized like, I still have a lot of gas in the tank and, what do
Hmm.
I want to do with my life? And just realized that, so many women are in need right now. And I
Hmm.
wanted to be able to build something that could help women.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
What's the name of the whiskey?
So it's called SIA. It's a
Yeah.
Scotch whiskey, SIA. And I'm really proud. I set up a grant program to kind of go in tandem with it. Creating the business was really difficult. Again, being a woman entrepreneur, there's not a lot of funding that comes to us.
It's true.
And so I set up this program, and it was $10,000 grants to small business owners that are minorities or
Mhm.
women-owned businesses. And there's a lot out there for venture businesses, but there's not a lot for small businesses, right?
Yeah.
And this is like the backbone of our society, right? Like these are like
Hmm.
family owned and operated. We give back to our community. So that's where I wanted to spend my time and energy. And the first year I was only able to contribute like $100. In the second year, like $200. And then I was really proud that 2 years before acquisition, we donated $250,000 in grants.
Wow.
And then added another 100,000 after that. So it's $10,000 grants that entrepreneurs received, plus 6 months of mentorship from me. So I was able to help them build their businesses with advice and community and support. And so now with Hot or Just Me, I said, how can I give back with this business? And so I've reached out to period.org and will be a partner with them. So a percentage of our sales will go towards helping give menstrual products to young girls who either can't afford or don't have access to them, so they can get to school and not have this be a barrier in their education.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, I'm looking into some menopause in the workplace initiatives as women are aging and still very much in the workplace. What are the tools, services, and resources that we could give women so that menopause isn't, an issue in their success?
Yeah, that's wonderful. So the company, the first one is Period. What was it called again?
Period.org.
Period.org. Okay.
And then,
awesome.
I'm just still researching various menopause in the workplace groups right now to figure out which is the right partner.
Yeah. Because, menopause in the workplace, I mean, I have been self-employed, but I could see we're having hot flashes and the moods I was having could have been a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. And also concentration issues, lack of energy. There's just, so much that's factored in. And can we get individual temperature controlled environments, or can we just have like the breaks when we need them? Or maybe it's like the clothing that we're wearing. If it's a uniform type job, like, is this clothing that's conducive to the reactions that I'm having in my body, right? So, what can we do to help support us?
I love it. That's wonderful. And I just love that you've created these different businesses. And we just had a podcast episode, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, where we talked about starting a business or trying something new. And I interviewed a lady who works with me who's 59, and she is taking comedy classes. She's a comedian.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And so it's like, I remember when I started my business, I had a friend who was I think 41, 42, and, hesitant about starting a new career at that age. And I'm like, that's nothing. That's so young. And so I love it when people are always, creating, because we can be, I don't ever picture myself slowing down. 90, still working, starting a new business, writing a book, whatever. Yep. I just think that sometimes we get that in our head. We're old. We can't do, past a certain age. And that's not true at all.
No. I had a huge reckoning with myself around my identity when I left my career, because it's what I studied, and I had a lot of, success financially as a creative director, and it's what my community was. I had, a regular salary, and I thought, I'm just going to leave that behind and do something I've never done before, or I don't know anybody in the industry. I don't know if this is going to be successful. Like, what am I doing? And that imposter syndrome, the inner critic that shows up telling you that, you shouldn't do this. Like, what business do you have doing that? And eventually it took like a solid 2 or 3 years before, okay, let me save up some money. Let me figure out how I'm going to do this, and then eventually just take that leap into the unknown. And I was trying to do both at the same time, like trying to work and start my business. And I wasn't doing either one, any service. So I finally realized it was time to just, go for it.
Yeah.
And that was scary. So it wasn't as scary this time around, because it was okay, I know what to do in terms of incorporating and insurance and setting up a business and, all the things. But I was having again, that little imposter syndrome, I'm not a medical professional. I don't claim to be. So there was that, who are you to talk about, perimenopause? And I thought, well, I'm in it.
I'm experiencing
this doesn't
it.
exist. And, I would like to be the person that does it. And then, the same thing in terms of, e-commerce, right? I had never really done that before either. And so my business was, in stores and, very much in the physical space of running an e-commerce business, especially at age 47. I'm not a tech dinosaur, but there's so much that's coming out now every day with AI, especially that it's how do I stay on top of things and then use these tools to help maximize impact as a solo entrepreneur. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think identity is always a big one to wrestle with.
I think, yeah, I agree with you. But the cool thing is, once you go for it, and I'm sure you've had the same experience, but I remember when I got, my LLC and had my logo and all my stuff and started, my business started to be a success. And I look back and I was like, I created this out of nothing.
Nothing.
That's
Yeah, it
a
was an
pretty
idea.
cool feeling, isn't it? Yeah, it was just an idea. And I do it, and then you do it. So that's
Yeah, and it's
very
funny as
empowering.
a business owner, there's a lot of ideas. Like we get ideas every single day, but it's like which is the one that you're going to be excited about every single
Yeah.
day and still have that energy and passion,
Yeah.
10, 20 years later, because that's part of it. Like it's yeah, and so some people hold ideas a little too close to their chest and not want to share them or not want to put them out in the world. And so, I think it's important just to try. I mean, it might work.
Yeah, it just might. And
Yeah.
you're right. It has to be what you're passionate about because when you own a business, it's 24/7. I'm going to bed at night and I'm thinking, what can I do? I mean, it's just always on your mind because
Yeah.
it's your baby.
Yeah. It's funny with my I started when I started my whiskey business, it was before I had children, and so I always called it like my first baby.
Yeah.
And there
Your
were moments
firstborn.
where my kid went off to college, right, but was like flunking out, like not doing so well.
So
Maybe had to
funny.
move back in for a while before I got like, okay, get back out there. But yeah, it's very much like it's you put so much of your energy and your time into it, and so you want it to be successful, and it takes a lot of nurturing, and yeah, you have to keep showing up for it.
Yeah. How long has your online store been open?
So not too long. We only opened 2 months ago.
Oh,
So
wow.
pretty new. Yeah,
Yeah, very cool. Probably working all the kinks out with that and figuring out.
exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So only opened a few categories at first just to make sure like, okay, is this viable? So we have hot flashes and night sweats as a category. We have, a variety of like tips and tools and resources as well for each of these, as well as products. We have insomnia and fatigue, vaginal dryness, low libido. We've got a bookstore and a gift shop. And so I hope to be rolling out some more categories over the next few months.
That's awesome. How are you getting the word out about it?
Yeah, so we have a pretty big resource directory, and so SEO has been friendly to us in that way. Been doing a few ads on Facebook. Been lucky enough to be interviewed on a few amazing podcasts like yours and interviewed with yourself. Yeah, next I think I'm going to again. This is the imposter syndrome kicking in is to tackle social media because I'm 47. I'm not someone who lives on social media, and I try to not spend time scrolling that way or trying to compare myself to others that way. And so I have to basically come to terms with accepting and using that as a channel. So that's what's next.
I mean, social media, especially for the people you're looking for, I would say they're probably out there,
Yeah.
because like my daughter makes fun of me because she's like, Facebook is for like older people. Like you, she's like, I guess the younger people, even though I'm on TikTok too, but they're kind of more hanging out there. But on Facebook, there's a lot of people my age and a little younger and a lot older. I've got friends in their 80s and 90s who are on Facebook and they're active and are interacting with you. The other thing, what about gynecologists? Because, I wish that mine had. Now, this is like 10 years ago now, so hopefully they're giving better advice to people. But he's just kind of like, you're just going to have to white knuckle through,
Oh, yeah.
So it would have been wonderful if he could have said, hey, your hot flashes are so bad. Here, call this, check out the shop and they may have some items for you.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. I'm working on a PDF that I could give to medical providers. So when I leave, like my doctor, I get like things like this, like like it's a PDF of resources, but to just include us as a possible resource as well. Definitely looking into that.
I would have bought the hot flash stuff, I can assure you.
Yeah, I mean, I live in it. Like I wear my cooling bracelet and then
So
put it
how
on
does
in the
that
morning.
work? I like that. So it's
It's
just
so fun. So it's from a company called Hot Girls Pearls, which is female founded, and there's a necklace option as well as bracelet option to kind of get you at your pulse points where you can like put something cold to kind of cool you down. It lasts several hours. They come in different styles and colors, and it's just wonderful for me.
Do you put it in
keeps me
the
cool.
freezer or something?
You put it in the
overnight?
freezer, for a few hours, and it recharges, and then you wear it until you can warm it up. It's also really good for people who are maybe like people who garden or play tennis or outdoorsy. So when you're out in the sun, it can definitely help to balance.
Yeah. That might be good for Disney World. I took my kids to,
Oh, that's a
I
great
just thought
idea.
about that. My
Yeah.
husband and I, we took our kids to Disney World in July. In
Oh,
Florida in
yeah, super
July.
hot.
Okay, that's crazy.
It was like
So,
100.
oh my gosh, and so humid. And so we had like these things you put around your neck, those
Yeah.
towels, but they only work
Oh,
for so long. And then I bought my kids those fans with water. And I remember at one point, I'm like, I'm so hot because I'm hot flashing too at that time. My
yeah.
son, I'm like, you have permission just to like squirt me in the face with the fan. Just do it. Like we're walking through Magic Kingdom and he's just squirting me in the face. I'm like, this is great. But
Like,
those might be wonderful.
yeah, yeah. And so I have these neck cooling fans as well on the site. And so
Ooh.
I went deep on this, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
ordered maybe 45 different neck fans on Amazon
Mm-hmm.
and tried them all on, which is too noisy, which is catching my hair, which is too heavy, like which one runs out too fast, or like all of the things. And so I ended up saying like, okay, this is the best one. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the one that we sell on the site. But those are really great.
That's cool.
I saw a few women wearing them when I was walking around New York City, and they were super stylish ladies. So I thought, okay, if they can pull it off.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to
Yeah.
get myself one of those if I go to Disney again.
There you
Or
go.
if I'm
Yeah,
going to be
because then it
outside.
just shoots like right at you. It's great, and they're lightweight, and they last a long
Yeah.
time too.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I need to check out. I looked through your store some, but I need to go back on there and check everything out. So, what kind of have you had any stories like people reach out to you and or like that was life changing?
Yeah, I think a big one is about advice I give about sleep. Is I've had a few people write to me about, thank you for sharing your story about sleep. And so I was definitely really struggling with sleep. And what I've learned and what I share is that sleep is so important, right? It affects everything. If you have a bad night's sleep, you wake up the next morning, you've got brain fog issues, concentration issues, you're grumpy, so you're more predisposed to like this like meno rage that we get.
Men rage.
Yeah, when it's like time to be in the mood with your partner, you're not in the mood because you're exhausted. You make bad food choices because you're tired, and your diet affects your everything, right? And so then same thing, like you'll skip the gym so because you're exhausted, and so now you've lost a workout. So all of these things could have been solved, right, with a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
And so trying to optimize for a good night's sleep, I tell people I like to take magnesium at night because that way it absorbs. If you take it in the morning, your body's already absorbed it by the time it's bedtime. Move my exercise till early morning, so it's not keeping me up at night. I know we touched on this, but like staying away from caffeine and alcohol, or even eating too big of a meal before bedtime.
Yeah.
The next one I would say is like easier said than done because I am guilty of it, but just turning off your device before you go to sleep and not having that blue light or that mental stimulus.
Yeah.
So just putting on your headphones and maybe listening to an audiobook or a podcast, right? To just kind of like wind down with something if you need to. And then your room temperature. So keeping it somewhere, I'd say between 60, 67, whatever that sweet spot is for you. But maybe even like what I do is I have it scheduled so it kicks on around 10 p.m. So that at that point I'm already asleep. So no, I'm not like, freezing my poor husband out. But like, kind of peaks around 3 a.m. and then starts to warm up the house again from there. So that, again, my children aren't freezing. They're wearing coats in the
idea.
house.
Yeah.
So that's a good one for sure. And then, like some of the things we have on our site, like we have cooling blankets and cooling sheets, cooling pillowcases. We have even a cooling eye mask that you put in the freezer as well.
Ooh.
Shape of your sleepwear and the fabric. So we have some anti-flush nighties from Become. We have this one that has kind of a T-back shape in the back, so you get as much skin exposure as possible. And yeah, just keeping it really dark in your room for sure. And if you have a snoring husband like I do, earplugs, just to put in the earplugs and you'll have a solid night of sleep. So just do everything that you can to just optimize for that good night of sleep.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned magnesium. Funny enough, I was just talking to some friends a couple of weeks ago and I ordered some magnesium because they said it's so good for sleep and to take it at night as well.
Yeah.
So I've been
have you
taking
noticed
it.
a difference yet? Or
I
is it-
have because
Okay.
I struggle with sleep too, but I think it's just stress or whatever. So at this point, I don't think it's menopause, but I think a lot of people as we get older struggle with sleep.
Yeah.
So, I've been taking it for a couple of weeks weeks now, and I do see a difference.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I've had some people tell me when they first start, they have like a little like tummy issues in the morning. So I just tell people maybe like cut your dose in half or like, just
That's what my friend said. So I started really small, and then I've been kind of increasing as I go. But so far, I feel good.
Yeah. Oh, that's good news.
So, but I always love, something natural we can do to help with sleep.
Yeah.
So, well, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and
Likewise.
I'm also happy to know there's a term. So it's meno rage, right?
Yes.
I'm going to let my kids know that it was a real thing I had when I was not pleasant to be around.
It's funny with my name, they call it being a Karen. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I so appreciate you being on. And then you've given us a promo code that we will, for your store or your shop, that we will be promoting.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Lori. It was just a pleasure talking with you today.
Same here. Carin is offering us a 10% off promo code. So when you go to her shop, which we will have the link to the shop in the notes in the podcast, when you go to her shop, just put in the promo code Aging in Style, and you will get a 10% discount. So thank you so much for that, Carin. And her website is hotorjustme.com. But again, that will be in the show notes. Also, thank you so much for tuning in each week and supporting the podcast. Be sure to share it with your friends and family. And if you want to go back and listen to all of our episodes, which there are many, please just go to my website, which is LoriWilliams-seniorservices.com. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.